Hey again, you guys. Welcome back to our next installment, our next lecture. This is the Great Depression, number 2 lecture of 4 that we're going to have. Uh, Today's been Wednesday, January 6th. Pretty eventful day in history. We'll try to talk about it in class as well. But hopefully you're doing well. So let's get back to our lecture. Here's where we ended off. Last time we were talking about the worldwide reaction to really what was happening in what became a worldwide Great Depression, not just in the US, but affected the rest of the world as well. And we talked about the rise of fascism, the rise of communism, and it's going to continue to rise. So today we're going to turn to the bonus army. And so it's important to remember Herbert Hoover was still in office. So when the stock market crash happened, that was 1929. So he had all of 1930, 1931, 1932, there was an election. And then in March 1933, that's when Roosevelt got inaugurated after election. So as the Depression continues to get worse, and what Hoover ends up doing is spending a ton of money and trying to give money to businesses. It's kind of like what we always do anytime we go into a recession or depression. We try to spend our way out and go into debt. In this case, it didn't work. It made it worse. Historians said that he didn't do enough, or he could have done uh, a lot less. And so there are economists that believe that it could have had a different outcome. But by the summer of 1932, we were in the worst part of the Depression when 25% of Americans were out of work. A lot of people were going hungry. Farmers were losing their farms because they couldn't pay their mortgages. And so at this time, 25,000 World War I soldiers marched on Washington, D.C., and they camped out on the National Mall and over near what we call Arlington Cemetery now. And so they wanted their bonuses paid. What is this bonus? Well, after they served in World War I, our federal government made a goal, sort of a a statement that they were going to pay every soldier that served in World War I for America a bonus. But it's not like they just dropped the bonus. Here's the $600 stimulus check like your family's just got. It was okay. Well, you have this bonus, but we're going to invest it on your behalf for 15 years. So you're not going to be able to get it until the early 1940s. So really 20 years, excuse me. And so this is going to upset, as we are going through a depression, these soldiers that have served. It was supposed to be like their retirement, but now they're demanding this money that was promised to them. And so they show up in Washington, D.C., and they say, hey, we're out of work. We need this money. Please give us this money that you promised us. And it's kind of like the protests you saw today. I mean, they're different for sure, but even protests happen today in Washington, D.C., based on very different reasons, of course, which we'll try to talk about in class. But what was Hoover's response? Well, he called in the army to tear gas all these protesters that basically camped out. They'd been there for weeks. And so it became sort of a public health crisis, kind of like nowadays as well. And so Hoover was like, you got to leave. We're not giving you your bonus. You have to leave. And in the end, he called in General Douglas MacArthur. He was our largest general at the time. We are quickly going to have a lot of generals as we get to World War II. But throughout the 1920s, 30s, MacArthur is going to serve as one of the top generals, and he's going to come in and basically level the camp. He's going to tear gas and get everyone out, and then he's going to torch the tents in the camp so that people can't come back in. And that tear gassing and the setting fire to the tents is going to create about 100 casualties. No one dies, but they're injured. Well, excuse me, one person died, and that was a little child, a little 3-year-old baby, which is unfortunate. But the rest of the casualties were people that were injured. So, and here's some pictures of this. So here's the DC police coming in and getting people to leave. And here's after the torching. So here's all the people here sitting in front of the Capitol building protesting, different than today, which became violent. These DC protesters, the bonus army, were not violent. They were just there and remained there, camped out, asking for their bonus, which they did not receive. And so in the end, you see it got burned to the ground. Here is the buildings being burned, kind of just shacks of wood buildings that were erected, and in the background is the Capitol building as they were burned down. So what does this do to Hoover on sort of the eve of an election? It's 1932. There's going to be a great big election. Is his sort of popular opinion is going to slide to be very low, one of the lowest levels of any sitting president. And so here's some of the ugly facts, and we'll get into sort of the consequences of that when we talk about Roosevelt. But here's some of the ugly facts of how bad the Depression was. You see in 1929, so this is before the stock market collapse, there's 23,000 business failures that happened in that year. And then in 1932, 32,000. So still, there's going to be every year businesses that continue to fail. Again, after 1932, things improve slightly. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the lecture. So personal income, you see 1929 was $2,300 per person. It slides to $1,600 per person 3 years later. Unemployment goes from 5%, which is historically pretty low and pretty good. And now in 1932 is 25%. So it's so high that basically a quarter of Americans are out of work, out of a job, and able to work, but they can't find work anywhere. So when it gets above 10, 15%, that's when we start calling it a depression. And you see it got so bad, it was 25%. Again, keep in mind that Germany was at 50% unemployment. So our Great Depression was bad, as you're reading in that article, what a depression's like. But for Germany was doubly bad, which will factor into what we talk about in World War II. So wheat prices for farmers, 1917, this is the height of World War I. There's such a demand for wheat that it's at $2 a bushel. You see by 1931, it slides to 34 cents. So all these farmers that are depending on their wages coming from the selling of their crops at market are really not getting the return that they had hoped for, and are going to default on their mortgages, on their farms, or on their equipment, and really going to be struggling as well. They're going to be the largest category of Americans that are going to be suffering, as well as those that are in the cities. So it's going to have rural and urban effects on Americans. Bank failures, how many banks are going to go out of business? You see 1929, 659 banks go out of business. 1933, 5,190. So if you had your money in these banks, maybe you could get your money out. But if you took all your money out and there was no money left, the bank would just close and you wouldn't get your money back. I don't know if you've ever seen It's a Wonderful Life. It's kind of that same deal where if the bank didn't get their money, they weren't insured by the government at the time. So they would just give out all the money that they could and then have to close because they had no money left, and they would go bankrupt because they had no money. So those are bank failures. You also see homicides spike during the Depression. Here's 32, 33. This is the height of the Depression. This is homicide spike, and then also suicides or spike, suicides is on top, and then homicides, murders is on the bottom. So they also spike during the Depression. And so who comes in to try to change the culture and change things in America? That's this man pictured. His name is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, as historians call him. He is related to our previous Roosevelt president, Teddy Roosevelt. He's like a fifth cousin, though. They share the same great grandparents. And so from there, the family tree goes down. And so then they have separate families. They wouldn't really necessarily see each other. They just kind of shared the same last name because really they had descended from the same distant relative. But they both lived in New York, and both of their families were very well-to-do. The Roosevelt family is very well-to-do. And so that was the same for FDR, kind of like Teddy, very well-to-do upbringing. But unlike Teddy, FDR is going to be a Wall Street lawyer, and he's going to work for the poor. He made a lot of money on Wall Street as a lawyer, and then started to do some charitable work for poor people. But as he's like a young man, he's in his 20s, he's stricken in 1921 with polio and becomes paralyzed from the waist down. And he had dabbled in politics up to that time and had served in New York government. And from after he gets stricken with polio, he spends a couple of years just trying to convalesce and regain his strength. Obviously, we don't see polio much anymore because we're vaccinated against it and almost eradicated polio. But at the time, it could bring about death. And then the most common sort of side effect of polio was paralyzation of some part of you. FDR was paralyzed from the waist down. So when he's president and you see him, he's usually in a wheelchair. He could be standing, he could walk with braces and a cane. But many times you saw him sitting down with his wheelchair covered. He didn't like to be shown in his wheelchair, or he'd be in a car. So he'd just be sitting. And people knew that he was paralyzed, but he didn't like to have the media or the press sort of take pictures or video of him in sort of walking or in a wheelchair to show sort of any weakness, especially during the Great Depression. So in 1922, he's going to use sort of his background of overcoming adversity to rocket to the top of the Democratic Party, and he becomes their nominee for president in the 1932 election. And so he's going to run against Hoover, who wants a second term. And so here's how the electoral college map looks in 1932. Is that Roosevelt is all this green in 1932. He wins lots of states except for in New England, which is going to remain strongly Republican at this time, just as it had throughout basically the mid-1800s Civil War and afterwards. So we'll start to see this shift as we go in American history, though. And so as he becomes president, he says, I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. And here he was going back to his distant cousin's square deal that he made to create lots of programs to bring about social, cultural, governmental changes and reforms into business as well. He's going to try to do the same thing, but he calls it not the square deal, but the New Deal. And that's going to bring about huge expansion of government in terms of programs and trying to employ Americans to work in government programs to do government things or cool things like building dams, which really affected our state in Washington State, like the Grand Coulee Dam being built, the Bonneville Dam being built. So brought hydroelectric power to the Northwest. So, but again, he got elected president in 1932. He's going to win 42 out of 48 states. We don't have Alaska and Hawaii until the 50s. And then he's going to win 57% of the popular vote. And he's going to immediately start sort of like a weekly, what is called a fireside chat, where it's like you could sit by the fire and listen to, Grandpa or Papa Roosevelt talking to you and telling you sort of the business going on in Washington, D.C. for that week and what's coming up. So this is like the early Twitter before there was Twitter that President Trump uses daily, hourly to get out his thoughts and beliefs. Well, Roosevelt was the original, the OG. He was given his fireside chats to the American public to tell them what was going on. So, and his wife is a very famous individual. She'll go on after Roosevelt dies and continue to be very well regarded, well respected. She was a humanitarian. So she was a distant cousin of Franklin Roosevelt, and she was Teddy Roosevelt's niece. So again, their family split, right? Great grandparents the same, but down the family line. So here's Teddy Roosevelt's side, and then here's Franklin Roosevelt's side. Well, Teddy Roosevelt's, I think it's his brother's daughter, would be a niece that way. So they ended up seeing each other at a big family gathering of all the Roosevelts. And, Franklin's like, hey, who's that? Oh, it's your distant cousin. Okay. It's an opportune time at family reunions to meet a significant other. So as long as they're not your first cousin, that's legal in Washington State to date and marry a second, third, fourth, fifth cousin, like Teddy Roosevelt, like Eleanor was to Franklin. So, but she was very well loved and regarded as first lady. She kind of made being the first lady a popular role. And she was seen as being a friend of the common people because she would also give sort of her weekly press conferences, sort of giving a woman's perspective on what's going on in America and in culture and in politics. But she was also very progressive. So wanted to see women's influence in politics and business government expand. And so she championed women in political roles, especially wanted women to get out and vote and participate, which is still, about 15 years fresh in American history that women are voting. So, and she really championed those causes for women and led the way for women. And so let's see, as we go on, we'll talk about how bad the Depression gets in our next sort of lecture. So we'll talk about how bad it gets in the cities and in the country, But we'll just stop here for today. How about that? So this concludes lecture 2 of 4. You'll have your next one when I see you next Monday or Tuesday. All right. Thank you all. Have a good day.